60-year-old Denaro, a former trigger man who allegedly once boasted he could fill a cemetery with his victims, is thought to have ascended to the position of boss of bosses after Salvatore the Beast Rena's passing in November 2022. In a video statement provided by the police, Special Operations Commander Pasquale Angelosanto claimed that the gangster was captured within a hygienic structure in Palermo, where he had gone for psychological treatment. While Messina Denaro was the most wanted man in Italy, the first documented image of him was from the early 1990s. 10 people were killed in bombings in Rome, Milan, and Florence in 1993. This was only a few months after the Cosa Nostra assassinated anti-mafia judges Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino in related attacks. His crimes were shocking even by mafia standards. Prosecutors connected him to a large number of killings that occurred in the 1990s, including the abduction and strangulation of a mafia turncoat's 12-year-old son, whose body was then submerged in acid. He was involved in the strangle of a pregnant woman as well as the killings of Italy's top 2 anti-mafia prosecutors, the deadly bombings in Milan, Rome, and Florence. The last Italian mobster associated with a brutal period when Sicily's Black Hand declared war on the Italian state, Matteo Messina Denaro, 60, was quietly apprehended outside a clinic in Palermo on the 16th of January 2023 after showing up under a false name for a medical appointment. After 30 years on the run, he gained notoriety as Italy's most wanted fugitive. Italian officials hailed the arrest as evidence that justice, even if slowly, will eventually catch up with the country's mobsters. This included Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, who traveled to Sicily to thank local law enforcement. The police and prosecutors were congratulated over the phone by Italian President Sergio Mattarella, whose brother Piersanti Mattarella was killed by the mafia in 1980 while serving as the governor of Sicily. But analysts and even local officials like Mr. Lucia, who termed the arrest an important contribution, were less certain about the arrest's final effect on the Sicilian Cosa Nostra or other still potent and extensive organized crime syndicates in Italy. He said that the Sicilian mafia had been crippled by decades of unrelenting police operations against it, including the imprisonment of its leaders for life without the prospect of release, the confiscation of their assets, and the disruption of their enterprises. The vicious 'Ndrangheta syndicate of Calabria and the Camorra gangs of Campania, he claimed, had taken its place as the key players through the trade in drugs, weapons, and other illegal activities. The 'Ndrangheta and Camorra's extensive control over the Sicilian mafia is no longer there, he claimed. Yet, because it keeps regenerating, it is a metastasis. Although Mr. Messina Denaro was a significant participant, especially given that his prior capos were either killed or imprisoned, he was never able to become the boss of bosses because, by code, the top mobster had to come from Palermo. Even though he was hiding, Mr. Messina Denaro was able to maintain control over the Trapani region in western Sicily. In addition to his penchant for bloodshed, he was renowned for his commercial acumen, managing resources, and entering legitimate economic entities like wind energy firms. He had protection from a sizable network of mobsters as well as citizen mobsters, according to the authorities, who strongly implied corruption. There weren't many hints the cops had to find him. Even his physical appearance had been questioned for a while. Italian media sites have reported sightings across Europe as well as video frames of an older guy, allegedly Mr. Messina Denaro, driving a vehicle across the countryside of Sicily. He may have had face surgery to conceal his identity, according to rumors. The only pieces of evidence the police had to work with were a tape of his voice from a 1993 hearing in a Palermo court and a handwritten letter to his lover that he left before going into hiding, based on a photo of Mr. Messina Denaro from a family album from the 1990s. The authorities created a computer-generated image of him and distributed it to news organizations and worldwide police forces to help focus their search. A man from Liverpool, England, was detained in the Netherlands in September 2021 after being mistakenly identified as Mr. Messina Denaro. Days later, he was free. The authorities claimed that there was no question this time. When cornered while in Palermo, the capital of the island, for a medical appointment, He promptly confessed, according to Paolo Guido, the prosecutor in charge of the inquiry in the Palermo office. The authorities claimed they discovered Mr. Messina Denaro had a malignancy that required particular hospital treatments as a result of their extensive investigations and wiretapped talks among the mobster's allies. The police then kept track of patients seeking similar care in a nationwide database, eventually whittling the list down to a few names, one of which they suspected to be the mafioso's alias. Mr. Messina Denaro arrived at the hospital with another guy from the Trapani area for his appointment, wearing tinted glasses, a brown leather jacket with shearling trim, a matching hat, and a Frank Muller watch valued at roughly 35,000 euros, according to the authorities. When Mr. Messina Denaro was stopped on a side street, the police had set up shop at each of the entrances. His photo ID card was reviewed. It appeared to be authentic and listed his name as Andrea Bonafè, which was the name they were looking for. They inquired as to his name. He responded, Matteo Messina Denaro, according to the authorities. The news organization Corriere della Sera published a recording online that appears to be of him providing his name to police. The police officers who got him into a black van and pulled away to a secret destination, according to the authorities, were applauded by onlookers outside the clinic. Officers hugged each other and raised their fingers as the car drove away. The prosecutor, Mr. Guido, stated that Mr. Messina Denaro had a right to health care just like any other Italian citizen, but that he would now receive it in a prison. Former bosses of Mr. Messina Denaro died and were buried there. The boss of bosses, Salvatore Riina, was apprehended in 1993, also in Palermo, after carrying out a string of violent killings of Italian prosecutors and police officers in the 1990s. He had described Mr. Messina Denaro as a youthful assassin with an act for slipping into local politics and business. Mr. Riina died in 2017 after spending the remainder of his life behind bars. Bernardo Provenzano, a Corleone family member like Mr. Riina, distanced himself from Mr. Riina's campaign against the government and the assassinations of prominent journalists and investigators. After 13 comparatively calm years of criminal activity, he was captured in 2006. A year later, Salvatore Lo Piccolo, a potential successor, was detained. Just Mr. Messina Denaro was still on the loose. When he was 31 years old, he vanished from the public eye. His father, a fellow mobster, passed away in secrecy in 1998. Mr. Messina Denaro, a notoriously tough employer with a penchant for fancy clothing and a playboy lifestyle, interacted with employees through handwritten notes and letters that he avoided writing himself. Over the years, the majority of his closest relatives have been detained for mafia-related offenses, but they have never betrayed him. But in recent years, police depleted his capital by arresting associates and seizing assets worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He was given a life sentence in prison in absentia in 2020 for his part in the 1993 explosions in Florence, Milan, and Rome that left 10 people dead, as well as the 1992 murders of the two anti-mafia prosecutors Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino. Giuseppe Di Matteo, a 12-year-old boy, was abducted in 1993, according to the prosecution, in an effort to persuade the youngster's father to cease disclosing mafia trade secrets to law enforcement. Later, the boy's remains were discovered in acid dissolving. Authorities in Sicily, though, made it clear that it must continue. When asked if Mr. Messina Denaro's detention, who had not yet been questioned, would trigger a bloody power struggle in Trapani, Mr. Guido, the lead investigator, responded that until this morning, Mr. Messina Denaro was the undeniable boss of the province. We'll find out tomorrow. Clearly, the mafia has not been vanquished, Mr. Lucia declared. To think the game is over would be a grave error. If you enjoyed today's video and found it interesting, then make sure to leave us a thumbs up and do not forget to subscribe to our channel and click on the bell icon to be always updated with the most exciting content as soon as it's uploaded. Thanks for watching. See you again soon in another video.